just going over the Git integration with Dataverse. Not sure if you guys have played around with it. It's actually a very interesting feature, and I think it has a lot of potential because it's bridging the gap between the code-first approach and a low-code approach in terms of configuring and building Dynamics solutions or Dataverse or Power Platform solutions. One thing that I always forget to mention in those user groups is that we are part of actually a wider community, which is the DUG meetups, so the dynamic user groups. I didn't know that, but apparently they were established in 1995. And I didn't know Dynamics existed in 1995, but apparently, yes. So maybe they started as a different type of user group, and then they evolved into DUG over the years, and then they took on over some of the new capabilities. So they've got quite a few dynamic-focused ones. So whether it's the finance and operation, or CE, CRM, or Business Central, and so on. So there's quite a range of them, and they do all sort of different conferences, so be it in-person conferences or virtual conferences. So if you've seen the Dynamics Con, they actually host that, and they've got some YouTube channels as well. They also mentioned that they may sponsor our food and drinks for the next session. So maybe next time we're going to be doing it in person at the Microsoft offices for the April user group, and just get a bit of sponsorship from their side. They did want me to advertise the upcoming Dynamics Con that is coming in May, and it's in Chicago. So if anybody is around the US around that time, and then would like to go in and visit Chicago and have a look at Dynamics Con, this is the place to go. I don't know if I can probably, if anybody's interested, please contact me and I'll see if we can get any discounts or something for the attendees. Anyway, the agenda today is that I'll do a quick introduction over what the Dataverse integration with Git is all about. And I'll go through 5 main elements of it: how to set it up, how do you do your first commit, how to get an update coming from Git, and how to resolve a conflict. So if changes were made on the two sides at the same time, how to resolve that. And the last one is how to do a two-way sync, where you've got two environments connected to the same Git integration, and then you would like to make changes from one environment and push them to the other environment. And then towards the end, we'll talk a little bit about limitations and Q&As. So as I mentioned, this is going to fundamentally change the way we do our development, our builds in the Dynamics and into the Power Platform. And it's also going to open a lot of new capabilities that are probably beyond the scope of what I'm going to talk about today. But if the community is actually interested in that, then we can have another follow-up session to explore the things that we can do now that we have access to all that code in a specific format, and how we can use the power of AI, for example, to help us with identifying issues with our solution, or being able to update it or change things into it, and so on. So at a high level, this screenshot I've taken from the official documentation. And the idea behind it is that they would have multiple developers working on similar solutions that are unmanaged, and they're going to push that into a Git integration and synchronize between all of them before you'll be able to use pipelines to package and deploy that into upper environments. The story today, and as of what is supported today, ends at the bit where you're synchronizing your solution with the Git environment. At the moment, you cannot actually get the pipelines to take that content and then push it into our upper environment. You cannot use the PAC CLI, for example, to package those into managed solutions and push them into upper environments as it currently stands. Maybe this is going to be introduced in the future, but stay tuned. There's a few announcements that are going to happen over the next couple of months that are really exciting about all those capabilities that are introducing. So Microsoft is following the typical crawl, walk, run, and they're looking at the fundamentals first and what we expect to see in there, and then have a look at how they can progress that. So there's 2 more slides, but I'm going to switch into demo mode because this session is going to be demo heavy. I just want you guys to just have a good understanding over how it works and what are the capabilities there. All right. First thing that you need to have is an Azure DevOps environment, with some projects installed in there. So I've got two organizations in my Azure DevOps, one called DXC Hackathon, the other one called DXC Preview. And under each one of those, I've got some projects. So if I click on this one, for example, the project itself is going to have a code repository, a Git code repository. And in there, I'm going to have that synchronization that is happening with the environment with Dataverse. It's important that your solution should, the Git repository must be initialized so that you can actually have those different folders in there. Like a root folder is enough. Even if you don't have a root folder, that's fine. But the repository itself needs to be initialized. Otherwise, Dataverse is not going to be able to see it. There's one thing that I also noticed. So if I go all the way to the beginning, at the beginning of the Azure DevOps, and I have a look at the settings at my high-level Azure DevOps level, as you can see in here, my name is associated with a basic type of access level. But then there are some other people that have a stakeholder access. Now, it's important that you have basic in there because a stakeholder won't be able to see the actual repositories. And as such, when you're connecting from Dataverse, because it's impersonating who you are, it will not be able to see the repository in ADO, even though it exists in there. Right, so let's have a quick look at how to set it up. So I go to make.powerapps.com, easy URL to find. If you forget it, you can use something like bit.ly/ppmake. Now, this is a bit.ly that I've created, and that takes you to the preview version of the Maker experience. So make.preview.powerapps.com. And usually there's some new features that are introduced in there that might be of interest to you. But typically what I would do is, if it's something that is in private preview, I would try and go into the preview.powerapps.com. If it's something that is in public preview or GA, then it should be available in the usual Make experience. So let's go back to the usual one. So make.powerapps.com is the place where you can go. Hopefully a lot of you are familiar with it. And then as you go into your solution, you're going to notice at the very top in here that there's a new button called Connect to Git. Now, this is where all the magic happens. If I click on that, it's going to give me a few options. Depending on which option you select, whether it's the connection type of environment or solution, you may have one or two screens that are in there. So that's the first decision that you have to make. Do you want to connect your Dataverse entire environment to Git, or do you want to do it per solution? Now, this is a very interesting debate. I've been part of that private preview since day one. And the first thing that they told us at Microsoft is that we've got environment connection type and you've got a solution connection type. Tell us what you think is the one that works best for you. So it's important to understand the differences. So the environment one is where it takes all the solutions that you've got and synchronizes them into one location in the Git environment, right? And that's really good. And Microsoft prefers, I had a feeling that Microsoft preferred this type of integration. And the reason for that is because it mirrors the way Dynamics is actually implemented at the database level. So the way Dataverse is set up is that you would see a folder or a table, let's say, with all the solutions, and then you would have a table with a reference to other tables or the schema, for example, the attributes, and so on. And it will be structured exactly the same way that it will be structured in Git if you select an environment. However, if you select solution, then every solution is going to have one folder. Now, in the early stages, you can have the same component in each one of those folders. So let's say I've got a solution called base and a solution called customer, and both of them will have the contact table associated with them. That was okay. And what it will do is that it will replicate those into each of the subfolders associated with those solutions. However, in more recent releases, they stopped you from using the same component in multiple solutions because they don't want to replicate it. So things to consider. All of that is very well documented in the link in here that we're going to see towards the end of the presentation, but they walk you through what is the difference between environment solutions, what are the compromises of choosing one over the other, and how to move forward. So let's say you select environment, that is going to ask you for your DevOps organization. Now, because I'm already connected, I can see the two orgs that I have, DXC Hackathon and DXC Preview. And as I select one of them, then it will automatically load the projects that are available in there. And from those projects, it will load the repositories. And from those repositories, it will load the branches. And it will tell you to either create a new folder or to use an existing one. So whatever name of folder that you type in here is going to either be created or be reused based on what you've got on your Git integration or on the Git side already. So that's it. If you select environment, that's all you have to do. So the moment I actually give it a name for that folder and I click on connect, I'm connected. I'm good there. Now, if I select solution, then it's going to ask me similar questions about which organization do I want to use, which project, which repository, and the root folder. So we select a root folder of our choice. And then you get another page where you get on next, and it will tell you for each one of those solutions, you need to set it up. So you say, okay, well, I've got one solution that is supported. I'm going to select the demo solution. Which branch do you want it and which folder, subfolder do you want to use it in? So /source/demo5. So this is a way we can actually go and configure those different solutions. Now, one thing to note is that not everything is going to be supported. So patches, for example, as far as I know, are not supported. The default solutions are not supported, and managed solutions will not be supported. Only unmanaged, custom unmanaged solutions that you're building, you'll be able to integrate within your environments. Right, so let's go to an environment where I've already set this up. So my organization in here has quite a few environments. Right now, I'm looking at Hackathon B. There's a few of them. I think the one that we were looking at before was Source Control Preview 6. We're looking at that, and then later on, we're going to do a comparison between A and Source Control 5. We'll get to that later. But right now, Auckland Hackathon B. By the way, if you guys have any questions, feel free to interrupt and then go off mute or put your hand up. I can see everybody on the screen as well. So happy to take questions as we go. Now, given that this is already integrated, when I'm going to click on that magical button that is available in here, is going to tell me what type of connection I have. This connection is an environment connection type, and I've already got the organization, the project, the repository, the branch, and the folder set up. And if I want a shortcut to get exactly to where I want to go, that's a really convenient way of doing it. There's that link over there. I always forget how to get there. I always rely on either the link to click on it to take me to my Git folder, or to start typing the URL and then it takes me there. It's not like Dynamics where you click on, or the Power Platform, you click on make.powerapps.com and it takes you there. If you click on dev.azure.com, and you don't know what the folder after that is, then most likely it's going to take you to the Azure portal as opposed to DevOps itself, which is quite interesting. But anyway, this is the environment connected with this specific project in here. Now, as you can see, there's one folder that's called solution, and it will have all the different solutions that you've got. So let's have a look. How many do we have? So we've got 2 solutions, Demo 2 and then Microsoft Demo. Both of those are connected, and that's why I can't see them over there. And then there's a couple that are not supported, the default solution and the common data services solution. Now that we have those solutions in here, you will notice that there's a folder outside of those solutions called entities. It will have all the entities that we've synchronized, and under each one of those entities, you'll have the forms, the attributes, the ribbon, the saved queries, as in the views, and so on. All the information that you need will be available in there. And as we drill even deeper, you will notice that everything is in a YAML format. It's not JSON, it's not XML as we used to it. So if you're used to exporting a solution, let's say unmanaged solution from an environment using the pack CLI to unpack that solution, it takes the big massive XML file and then turns it into little folders with little XML fragments. We've moved away from that, and now we are using YAML format. The YAML format, hate it or love it, it's there to stay. It's becoming the new industry standard. What's really good about it is that it's easy to read from a human perspective, but also if you think about it from an AI perspective and you want to interact with YAML, it's not as chatty as XML. It doesn't have a lot of unnecessary tags. It's a little bit more concise, which means that you will be using less tokens when you're interacting with YAML in the future. So all good reasons why they are using YAML. The main thing that I really like about YAML is that when you're doing given that it's driven by the indentation and the structure, it's really easy to do a diff. So if you've got a merge, if there are two files that are doing the same thing, you can easily go and change those and then make updates and so on. Cool. Let's go back to make.powerapps.com and let's go and have a look at making a change and see how we can push that change. So the first thing that we did was we connected our environments into Git. We can see what that representation of the YAML files look like. Now, the second thing we're going to do is do our first commit. So I go to columns, and then over there, I've got a table called coffee order. I click on quantity. And let's have a look. So I'm going to change something like, for example, the maximum value is, I think 100 is too much. I'm going to change it to just 10. And I click on save. Now, the moment I save that into my environment, behind the scenes, it's evaluating that I've made the change and it's staging those changes into a place that is available on the left-hand side, which is the source control element in here. So pipelines are relatively new. We've seen that last year show up, and that gives you an out-of-the-box set of pipelines that allows you to deploy from one environment to the other. Now they've introduced source control. If I click on that, it will automatically notice that I've changed the quantity attribute. So it will tell me it's the object is called quantity. It's of type attribute, and it has a name as well. But the only thing that it will not tell me what has changed. It will just show me that there've been some changes in here. Now, before I commit, let's go and have a look at quantity in here, right? And you can see the min and max value are still the old two values, 0 and 102. So if I go back in here, I'm like, okay, well, I'm happy with the changes that I want to do. I'm going to commit that, and I'm going to add a comment to my commit. And I'm going to say updated quantity to 10, right? Ideally, one day, maybe you'll be able to do that. I don't want to like spoil too much, but if you can summarize the content using AI so that it can generate the information in here and then avoid you making spelling mistakes like I am, then that would save you a lot of time. And potentially, you can even do auto commits. But anyway, that's a conversation for another story. All right, let's click on commit. It's going to take my changes. It's going to generate a commit into the server side, and it's going to push those changes over there. It even gives me the GUID, the unique reference for that specific commit. I can click on it, and I can actually have a look at what changed. And as you can see, it clearly identified that it's changed the maximum value from 102 to 10 in here. So if I go back to my file, again, this is still the old value because I haven't refreshed. So if I do an F5, then I'll be able to see the fact that it was changed from 0 to 10. And then I can go and have a look at the history. This is the exact commit message that I put in on the Dataverse side. And now I can see that there's a history in here, and it knows exactly who made that commit because I am the one that went into Dataverse and clicked on that commit bit in here. So let's do the opposite. So now that we've got that capability, I'm going to go and edit it in here and then change it to, let's say, a new value. And let's say rather than 10, let's do it as 20. And click on commit, updated this specific record, that's fine. Right, so as you can see, we've changed the value minimum from 0 to 20, the maximum from 10 to 20. All right, so now it's in the history. Now, if I go back there and I say check for updates, it knows what is in the environment, when was the last time it pushed those changes, and it knows that there's been a change that happened further down the track. So now it's showing me that that quantity attribute was updated as at 420, which is right now, and it gives me the option to do a pull. A pull is when I say, all right, I know there are changes on the server. I want to actually click on that button and then go to get those changes in here. So if I go and click on that pull button, it's going to go and update the changes locally onto my environment and synchronizing the two between the Git environment and the Dynamics or Dataverse environment. Now, before I do that, let's suppose that someone is actually working on that specific value. And I'm going to click on edit. And I'm going to say, in fact, I want to change it to 30. And I'm going to click on save. Now remember, there is an update that happened on the server, but at the same time, I also did an update on my side. And those two updates are not the same. So if I go into source control, it will automatically detect that there is a conflict that has emerged. Now, the experience of resolving a conflict is relatively limited. I cannot see what's happening in there, but I can certainly go and click on that specific record and have a look at what is the value on the server side, right? So I know on the remote branch that this value is currently 20. So I can see that, I can understand that, but it doesn't do a side-by-side comparison between what is in my environment and what I can see in ADO. You just have to be able to understand how those two things work. And then you can make a choice. You can either accept the incoming changes or keep the changes that you've got in your environment. In this case, I'm going to accept incoming, and it's going to ask me whether I want to confirm that. So now it goes back into conflict resolution done, and I've got an update, and I can say pull that change. So now that I go back into the quantity, it's going to reflect back into the 20 value rather than the 30 value that conflicted with whatever was on the remote server. And it gives you some feedback that has been done. So let's quickly have a look at that. Go to the table, coffee order, column, quantity. I did that. And as you can see in here, it reverted back to the 20 value that was available on the remote server and overrode my local changes. So most likely the majority of your scenarios will be similar to those. You make a change into your environment, you commit, changes happen on the server, you pull them in, and sometimes you've got conflicts and you have to decide, do I take the one on the server or do I take the one locally? The good thing about the conflict resolution is that you can cherry pick. So you can say, I want those from the server, but I want those to stay locally, which gives you a bit of flexibility. But if you're doing a commit, it's all or nothing. They haven't introduced the ability to actually select between or to choose between which one you want to commit and cherry pick in your commits. Maybe in the future that solution will be available. Right, if you don't have any questions, I'm happy to move on to the next demo, and the next demo is to do the two-way synchronization. But again, if you want to know more about it or you have any questions, feel free to do that. Right, so moving on, what I might do is just, yeah, I'm going to minimize that. All right, so we've got same organization, two environments. The one on the left-hand side is connected to Auckland Hackathon A. This is my environment name. And the one on the left-hand side is connected to Source Control Preview 5. Two different environments within the same organization, within the same tenancy. If I go into the solutions, this is solution, this is solution. And in here, you will see the Git connection. And I open the Git connection in here. I can see it. There we go. You will notice that those two are exactly the same. They're both connected to Hackathon. They're both connected to Auckland Hackathon 2024, and they're both part of the Hackathon Solution 2024. Now, this one has Demo 3 selected, so let me select Demo 3 and then see the actual connection. So both of them are connected to main branch. Both of them are connected to the Git folder source and demo. Two different environments, same unmanaged solution, both of them connected to the same environment in the background into the Git environment. So what I'm going to do is make a change into one environment and show you how we can pull it into the next environment. So starting from the environment that is on the right-hand side. So first of all, let's see if there's anything that is pending. No changes, no updates available in there. Perfect, that's exactly what I'm expecting. So I go into my solution. Again, something really simple. There are students. Students have columns associated with them, the student table. There's an age. I'm going to go and edit that age. What's the maximum age? Let's have a look. Really simple. 1000, of course not. Let's say 200. And then click on save. So I've made a change on my environment that is available on the right-hand side. And now that is going to be identified as a change that I can potentially commit into my environment. So once this is done, go back in there, it identified that there's a change, it knows exactly which attribute has changed, and I can go and click on the commit, and I'm going to go and say in here, updated age attribute. Right, commit. Right, let's have a look at what's happening on the left-hand side. So I've got a demo environment, I've got a student table in that column. There must be an age, and if I go and click on edit that age, it's going to have an age of 1000. As you can see in here, this is the old value because I haven't synchronized it yet. So cancel that. Now, if I go to the Git environment, similar to what we saw happening before when I changed it straight onto the on the server side, if I going to click on check for updates, it's going to connect to Git, is going to go and find out whether there are any changes since the last time we checked in, and is going to return age. Now you will also notice that there are many other ones other than age. This happened the first time I did the synchronization, and I've identified a bug in that integration. So for some reason, every time I do a pull and I synchronize and I accept those incoming changes, it keeps owner, time zone, and UTC and owner team. It just keeps them as pending changes. I don't know why. It's something that I raised with Microsoft as a bug that is currently in that integration. Again, this is probably one of the reasons why it hasn't gone GA yet, because there's a few teething issues that Microsoft is working on. Hopefully, once they address all of those, then they'll be going in GA. So now that I've got age, again, I can click on pull. And then once it pulls those changes, it will synchronize and will say, yep, age is up to date. And now it's going to have the 200 value, maximum value, as opposed to 1000 maximum value. And yeah, that helps you with the synchronization. So if you've noticed, we did not actually export a solution. We did not run a pipeline to import the solution and wait for the changes to happen. Now, this is taking a little bit longer than what I'm expecting. It's done now. But if you compare that to the export of a solution, the running of a pipeline, and the import of a solution in another environment, this is significantly faster. And the reason it's so much faster is because it knows exactly what has changed. It understands that actually that solution that I've gotten here has a parallel representation in Git. And as it's using the Git capabilities to see what has changed since the last time I did my synchronization. And it's based on timestamps and file systems and so on. And it knows that there's only one attribute that has changed. It pulls that one attribute and it updates that one attribute. So it's not doing a full solution import, analyze the entire XML. The old way of doing it, like up until I think late last year, it used to re-import everything, whereas the new way of doing things is, even with solutions, it does a bit of a diff and it tries to identify what has changed and it's selective over what it's updating. But still, compared to what you're getting in here, it's significantly faster. No solution management, just synchronize it with your Git environment in ADO, and then just pull and push or commit as required between your environments. So again, it's going to revolutionize the way we actually do our work on a sort of day-to-day basis. And as they enable more features where, you know, as we saw in the intro slide, that you're going to use a pipeline to take whatever is in Git and be able to promote that, this is when I think we're going to get the full value out of that feature, where everything to do within div environments can be synchronized between environment and Git, and you don't have to worry about solution deployments and so on, and you can ensure that there's consistency between what you're trying to achieve. And eventually, when the pipeline and the tooling is available to package it as managed and then push it into upper environments, this is where we're truly going to enable the full potential of that solution. Any questions so far? Let's be really clear. Okay, oh good. Right, so let's talk a little bit about the limitations. The first thing to note is that this is currently only supporting unmanaged solutions. and it's only meant for development environments. So as I mentioned, you're synchronizing your solutions between your dev environments. You're not packaging into higher environments such as a test, UAT, pre-prod, prod, because there's no managed packaging out of that capability, not at the moment. So the Microsoft recommendation, if you read the documentation, specifically says use it only in unmanaged locations, which is usually your dev environment. It only accepts a single branch. So as you could see, when I'm actually working on it, I just had to select one branch. Once you've got that branch selected, then you can change that. It's not using any advanced branching mechanism or methodologies where you can have like a GitLab type of methodology or Git flow methodology where you would have multiple branches, one for each of the environments. And as you synchronize between one branch to the other, then you can push things across and so on. Now, it doesn't work that way, at least not for now, maybe in the future. But the MVP community is actually really keen to take it to the next level so that we can mirror the typical best practices in branching into the day-to-day Dataverse work that we do in here. So right now, single branch. The conflict resolution experience is not great. So as you guys saw, I could only see that there is a conflict. So I could see that, I can accept the one on the server or the one locally, but it doesn't give me a clean diff comparison between the two. I have to jump on the server to go and figure out what has changed over there and try to remember what I've changed on my machine locally and then do the comparison that way. Maybe that experience will change in the future. We will see. And then moving forward, and this is where I got it wrong at the beginning. I was like, "Ooh, I've got access to the YAML. I can go and change that YAML till my heart is content." Like you can do a true code first approach. You can create new YAML fragments. You can go and fiddle with it and change whatever you want. I was wrong. Go read the documentation. It specifically says whatever is currently supported in XML changes is supported in this approach, but do not go and make changes outside of that boundary. And it's very, very clearly defines what you can and cannot do. So there are a few examples, such as localization. And localization was always a recommendation by Microsoft. Export your solution, change the localization details, and then import them back. Anything to do with code first components. So if we're talking about PCF controls, DLLs, like the plugins that you register or custom APIs. If you're talking about web resources, JavaScript, or even like custom web pages like HTML extensions and things like that, yes, you can update that into source control and synchronize it back. And then the other one is the ribbon, because historically speaking, unless you use Scott Duro's tool, the ribbon workbench editor, Microsoft was recommended that the only way that you can change your ribbon is to export the XML, fiddle with it, and then import it again. You can do that with a YAML fragment, but those are your boundaries. Don't go beyond that. Like, don't go and create a new attribute by going file new YAML file, my attribute, and then fill in the information in there, and then make sure that you've got the GUIDs in all your environments and so on, and then push that into your environment. Because then there's a lot of room for making mistakes. And if you mess it up, you mess it up royally. Like, even the support team will go, you did something that is unsupported. We don't have any obligation to go and support you in that space. So just be very mindful over what is accepted and what is not. Now, as I learned that this is not possible to go and change things, I think the next iteration of using this capability is maybe to mix the option of using the APIs to generate your schema and then using the integration as an option. So for example, with PowerShell, I can go and create in a fully supported way new attributes associated with a table. So if you have an API to do that, you can feed that API by some inputs, like for example, a data dictionary. And then if you have AI in the mix, you would say, based on what the schema is available in the YAML fragments, go and have a look at what's in my data dictionary and check whether there are any discrepancies between the two. And as you see those, go and update them using the API. So use PowerShell, for example, to go and create the missing attributes or go and update the schema, the metadata behind those specific attributes. And then once you've got there, then you synchronize back and then your YAML will be updated. But always use a supported way of creating the content before actually coming back into your environment. And that might be a good setup for an upcoming session where we talk a little bit about that. If any of you were in Auckland and you attended the Global Power Platform Bootcamp, Clive was actually showing the capability on how he managed to do that. And his code that he used is open source, so he can go down. You can download it from GitHub and then start using it yourself as well. Very smart way of actually doing all of that. So again, lots of room of improvement over there. The feature itself is still in its infancy, so we're going to see a lot of new exciting capabilities that will come up in the near future. So keep an eye on it and then start using it. Give feedback to the product team. If you have access to them, give feedback to the MVPs or to your local community. We have monthly calls with the Microsoft product team that looks after that feature. We always ask them for prioritizing the things that the community is asking for, and they usually follow that, especially if there's a good reason for it. So we are there to amplify your voice. Nathan and I and Jiva, in fact, we're going to be at the MVP Summit later this month. So in a couple of weeks. So yeah, feel free to talk to us because we're going to be sitting next to the product team and giving them that feedback. So the last slide is just some documentations that are available in there. Don't worry too much about the full URL. The best way to actually get there is to just go into your, let's say Google, and then you would say Dataverse Git integration. And I think it's the first link. Yeah, overview of Dataverse Git integration in there. There's a few videos. I think there's one that is authored by me. This is the setup that I was talking about. So the first screenshot, they talk a little bit about a high level, what it does, what it doesn't do, and then the limitations. But then again, if you go into the Dataverse Git integration setup, it's going to, first of all, tell you need to set up your ADO. And then after that, it's going to say, you need to select either environment or solution. And then you can click on that and that will take you to what's the difference between those two? What are the things to note about environment binding and solution binding? And also what are the consideration to take into consideration? And then just make sure that you're selecting the right one moving forward. As of now, once you select one, you cannot change to the other one. Once you connect, you cannot unconnect or disconnect. So those are things that you need to keep in mind. Maybe in the future they're going to change that. I would not be surprised if they do, but just keep watching and then listen to all the news and of what's happening. My guess is that there's a few big conferences that are going to be in the US associated with Microsoft. I think MS Build is just around the corner in a couple of months. My guess is that you may see some really interesting announcements over there. And that's it. That's it for my presentation. So happy to take any questions. So yeah, if anybody wants to go off mute or would like to know a little bit more about that capability, I'm happy to discuss it. I had quite a few interesting questions in the past about, like whether there's a preference on which setup to use, environment versus solution. I think I started by using solutions, and then very quickly I realized that environment may be better for what I'm trying to achieve. So my recommendation would be to use environment, but again, that depends on what you guys are trying to achieve. And yeah, so any questions? Anybody has anything to do? Come on. Nathan and Jiva, I don't want to pick on you, but ask a question.
Yeah, so I set this up in my environment, and I guess I'm still kind of getting my head around the whole thing. So I set it up, and I'm kind of like, where to from here, I guess.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So at the moment, if you only have one environment, the only thing that you can do is commits. And then just observe what's happening on the server side, on the remote side, right? So just have a look at it, get familiar with it. If you want to take it to the next level, try to connect two environments to the same one, and you can see how you can synchronize them, just like I demonstrated today. But that's definitely the first step. Yeah. So you definitely did more than a lot of people have done. And the moment you do that, then you can understand the potential of it. So remember when Clive was doing his session, he did static analysis on that.
Right? Yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to get to, is to replicate some of the stuff Clive showed. So yeah.
And that was very smart, because he's like, okay, well, hey, I've got this entire security role that I've synchronized.
Yep.
And I want to see that read, the name of the security role is read. Does it have any rights? And it can actually understand the YAML and then go, oh, yep, you've got some rights in there that you shouldn't have. It gives you that static analysis, which is really amazing now that we have access to that code.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So I'm not great with stuff like GitHub as a low coder. So, but I'm working on it. So
yeah, but this is good feedback, and that's why Microsoft appreciates that there is a low code story and there is a pro coder or code first story, and that's why they want to make sure that it's as seamless as possible, as long as you understand the basics that we talked about today. That I can do a commit, and I can do a pull, and I can do conflict resolution. That's all you need to know at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, it was very easy to set up. I mean, it was just a few clicks and I was away. So it was pretty cool to set up.
And I think this is one of the like KPIs, right? Like how can when they come up with a new feature, one of the things that they go is how can I actually set it up in less than 5 minutes, right? Once you know what you're doing, it will happen really quickly. Same thing with pipelines. How can I get a low-code developer to be able to set up a new pipeline in less than 5 minutes? And then you go through the wizard, and then once you know how to do it, it will be easier and easier. So I think this is one of the things that they're really focusing on, is that user experience to minimize that barrier of entry where you go, it's too much, it's overwhelming, I'm going to step away, and then I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I got to say, it was very easy to set up. For me, it's kind of getting my head around the bigger picture of it. I know why we do source control. I guess but it's something I generally don't touch as a functional a lot. But
exactly.
Yeah, but it's it was very easy to set up.
Yep.
If I can do it, anybody can do it.
Can play keyboard and do it at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So from my perspective, this as you pointed out, the missing the upgrades that's going to add to this one, when those thing comes in, it makes more value. I think this is just a starting of the game. And what you guys showed in the Auckland Power Platform user, the Global Platform Bootcamp was amazing, right? And this is it's like a forefront to what that's possible when we take it from behind the game. So that's why I think it takes it to a whole different level. And also it's very useful. I don't know, we need to check whether in real time, when we have development environment, not the trial or sandbox, when we use multiple development environments within the same tenant, which the developers creates to basically try something on, and then before we go into the actual sandbox development environment, I'm talking about the development type of development environment. I'm just wondering how this can be leveraged in that flow as well before we take it to the sandbox development environment. And then from there, of course, we can't use this at this point of time, but at least this can be used between this development to development sandbox.
Yes.
Because it's all unmanaged.
Yeah, and this is like when I was doing the two environment synchronization, this is what I was trying to mirror. So let's say you've got a full dev, if you want, sandbox, and you've got a specific developer's environment. And I'm a big fan of actually, this is now a new industry term, by the way. Treat your environments like cattle, not like pets. So I want the environments. And I don't want to be emotionally attached to those environments, right? I want it to have a number, not a name, and I want to get rid of it whenever I'm done with it, and then spin up a new one really quickly, right? And the only way that you can efficiently do that is by having some sort of a Git integration where you spin up an environment, you say, this is where my Git repository is, get me all the solutions that I need, and then even potentially in the future, I don't know, take a branch out of that. And then once you've got that branch, then you can do your pure dev setup. So it's a feature environment, and then you would commit your changes, and then you would synchronize them back. Like you would do a PR between your feature branch and your main branch, for example, and then that would reflect in the sandbox environment that you have. That's the ultimate. So this is what I was talking about in terms of the Git flow best practices and the branching methodology that is usually used. So if we can mirror that and then have it into a Dataverse environment, then that would be really useful. Yeah, Nathan?
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, totally with that, because that lets us kind of get to pure DevOps, right? Like we're going to go build a new feature and we just spin up an environment, build, commit, wipe it, move on. A lot of what in our world, though, is data related, right? Because of Dataverse and particularly reference data. How do we handle that in this? Because you could use something like Pack CLI with PowerFX REPL or PowerFX Run, but it doesn't maintain WIDs, and that's where like particularly in automations and whatnot, when you've got those, is there a way to kind of replicate that type of stuff?
So the story is not fully complete, right? Or not mature as much.
Yeah.
Yes, you can do it, but it's not let's spin up a new environment and then connect it to Git, because there is a little bit of extra scaffolding that you have to do. So what I've seen other people do is either use advanced Azure DevOps pipelines or to use capabilities like the new pipeline out of the box. So something like this one in here, where they start introducing references to capabilities outside of the out-of-the-box stuff that can go and push and update that data. So there's definitely more that can be done. Maybe if Pack CLI becomes a little bit more mature and can help us also include data in solutions, reference data and solutions, then that might also help in that specific space. There's definitely room for improvement, and this is a very good example that you're giving where the solution itself is not enough. Sometimes there's data, there is maybe pre and post deployment steps that you have to make just to ensure that the environment is ready. The only thing is that, yes, you can do it with automation, right? Do you want to invest in automation because it's going to save you a lot of time, or is that too difficult and too complicated, and then maybe wait until something that is out of the box will allow you to do that?
Yeah, something that I put in a feature idea to the Dataverse team a couple years ago that, as far as I know, never really went anywhere, but it would be awesome if in our Dataverse tables, if you could just tick something to say this is reference or master data. And so you could have an option when wiping an environment to say maintain that and wipe everything else. I mean, I get it could be complicated when, like let's say we want to wipe an environment and then create a new one and seed it from Git. You could have some dependency issues. But it would be amazing to be able to say get rid of the transactional data, but keep the reference data in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think it's far-fetched, to be honest, because if you think about environment variables are solution aware. The moment you install your solution, yes, it will bring those values with it. So having something a little bit more elaborate than that is not too far-fetched. The other part of the equation is if you've done a code-first approach and use a CDS proj. So if you have Pack CLI and then you initialize a solution, then it's going to generate a Visual Studio solution that will be aware of your actual solution and will have pre and post deployment steps that you can define in C#. So a lot of the pro coders actually use CDS proj to go and hydrate an environment, import data at the same time, and then to go get the whole package sorted. So there are ways around it, easy or difficult, low code or pro code. But yeah, I mean, again, it depends on how much you want to invest in making all of that possible. If it's out of the box, always better.
Yeah, definitely.
Sounds good. All right, so we've got the last 10 minutes, so I am more than happy to start my weekend early and then give you guys 10 minutes back. But thank you, everybody, for attending. I think that was a good session. Thanks, Jiva and Nathan, for asking the hard questions and then, just exploring the art of possible into the solutions. My last recommendation is I really hope that you guys play around with those features. We've had a look at how to set it up, which was very easy. How to commit your changes, how to synchronize your changes, how to do a two-way sync as well, how to do conflict resolutions. Those are the basics. Play around with it, give us feedback, and then we'll be able to talk about it in the future. Cool. Thank
Thanks,
you very
Rami.
much, everybody.
Awesome session.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
Rami.
Cheers.
Thank
Talk
you.
to you later.
Bye.